Welcome back. In this video, you're going to learn about primary emotions and secondary emotions. And these are pretty simple. Your primary emotion is the first emotion you feel. And your secondary emotion is the emotion you feel about the first emotion. The secondary emotion, it's the way you feel about your feelings. So for example, if you're depressed and you recognize that you feel depressed, you might feel depressed about feeling depressed. And it becomes a double whammy in this situation. The fact that you know you're sad can make you feel even sadder. And it can get more complicated than this. For example, if you're feeling afraid, well, you might feel ashamed about feeling afraid. Or you might feel silly about feeling giddy. You might feel angry about feeling anxious, and so on. Well, here's the thing, and this can be tricky to get the hang of, but your primary emotion is more, I want to say more real, more authentic, your primary emotion is the way you're feeling because of what's going on in your life. Your primary emotion is the emotion that springs up because of what's happening around you and what's going on in your life. For example, you might feel lonely because you're home alone on Saturday night. Your secondary emotion, on the other hand, is a judgment. It's part of your brain judging that primary emotion and often making it worse. And you don't do this consciously, but it is something you can become conscious of. So back to our example, you may feel that it's pathetic to be lonely on Saturday night, and that makes you feel sad. So now you're lonely and sad. Initially, you were just lonely. That was your primary emotion. Now, because of your judgment that it's pathetic to be lonely on Saturday night, now you're lonely and sad. The sadness being your secondary emotion. The thing is, you don't have to feel both. Specifically, you don't have to feel the secondary emotion. Think about it this way. If you're lonely, you can do things to change that feeling, either by being more social or by focusing on something else to change your mood. But if you're lonely and sad, that's two emotions you have to change. That's more difficult. So remember, it's easier to deal with one primary emotion than it is to deal with the primary emotion plus a secondary emotion. So how do you avoid this emotional double whammy? The key is, first, to recognize, and second, to accept your primary emotion. Now, when I say accept the emotion, it doesn't mean you have to give up or give in to that emotion. It doesn't mean that you're powerless over that emotion. It just means that you have to validate it, to accept that this is how you're feeling right now. You can't change your emotion until you accept it first. You might even tell yourself that it's okay to feel that way. If you're this guy, you might tell yourself that it's understandable to feel a little lonely when you're home alone on Saturday night. And suddenly, what have you done? By recognizing and accepting that feeling of loneliness, you've really empowered yourself to change it. Plus, you've eliminated any negative secondary emotions. When you accept your primary emotion, you can stop judging it, and that stops the secondary emotion in its tracks. So how can you get better at recognizing and accepting your primary emotions? Well, that brings us to our next video on mindfulness.